My guest today is someone who's a curator, a teacher, a writer, an artist. She's someone who has taken diverse Indian art forms to an international platform and has done it in a way that it has helped to bring in a lot of consciousness around how evolved Indian art forms actually are. Her efforts have also helped to bring due credit and recognitions to the artists back home. During the pandemic, she's been supporting artists to come up with art which is influenced by the situations of COVID around us. In her personal life, she's a vibrant personality who has never chosen to give in to grim circumstances in her life, even when she was fighting against cancer. A wonderful combination of resilience and creativity. I'm pleased to have with me Minhaz Majumdar on Her Stories. With close involvement in Indian tribal and folk art forms, for Minhaz, art is art and does not need any labels. While it is a natural tendency to classify art forms as high, contemporary, classical, folk, tribal, and so on, it is equally important to examine that these names may define the specific art, but at the same time, they box them into parameters. When viewing these art forms, it is important to understand that there happens to be a great deal of influence of our historical and social background in the way art forms are classified and subsequently perceived. Sometimes in a quagmire of different labels, it is easy to miss the woods for the trees. She opines that in the present day and age, when we are revisiting concepts of identity and community, perhaps it is important to view tribal and folk cultures and their material expression in a new light. During the pandemic, Minhaz has enabled artists to work in a nuanced way and has evolved ways to share their work on online platforms. The artists have drawn inspiration from the fight against corona and have depicted those thoughts in very interesting creations, which have been widely appreciated. Minhaz has been a true survivor. Even while she was fighting her battle against cancer, she kept her mind diverted by reviewing works of her artists. Driven by a strong willpower, Minhaz has always chosen hope over despair, and she proudly professes her mantra that cry if you must, but don't forget to live.
I have with me a guest today who can easily boast of having 5 careers and each very different from the other. A writer, a former journalist, a person who has taken Indian folk and tribal art on an international platform and won a lot of appreciation for that. A person who has revived bamboo and the usage of that eco-friendly material in day-to-day life. And at the same time, she's an extremely resilient person, and I'll leave it to her to discuss what life means even after a lot of hardships and coming up with a smile even after a lot of challenges. Minhaz Majumdar, a pleasure to have you on Her Stories.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, Minhas, there is so much to talk about your career and your personal life. I think it will be a difficult juggling act for me. But if I have to start with your current project that you've been looking at, in fact, not looking at right now, but you've been working on it, taking Indian folk art forms on an international platform and helping the tribal artisans in a lot of ways. And the reinvention that you have done at the time of COVID, spreading it around for people to become a part of it, that participatory approach that has come about in the work. Please share something about that.
Sure. I've been working with folk and tribal art now for over 20 years. And one of the reasons is that I come from the northeast of India, where there are a lot of tribes and a lot of communities, and very little is known about that area. So when I began, actually at that point of time, the northeast was known for a lot of insurgency and a lot of problems, and I wanted to have a very positive image of that region, and I started working with folk and tribal crafts and arts, and basically looking at how one could portray the culture positively. So since then, it's been a very, very rewarding journey. I've been able to place folk and tribal art in major museums across the world. I've been able to help the artists, get steady income, get wonderful projects, and it's been a good journey. In recent times, during the COVID virus, the lockdown, it was very tough because a lot of these communities live in remote areas. They don't have access to materials, they don't have access to markets, and they're dependent on tourists going there or them coming to cities. And it became a real challenge how we could continue to support them, how we could continue to enable them to express themselves creatively, because one thing is to do stuff for yourself, but the other is how do you manage things on a global scale. So what we decided was to use technology for their benefit, and the projects that we are doing is actually inspired by their own response. The artists are very, very creative, and they've come up with a series of COVID drawings, and I am now working to place them in museums all over the world. The other project is very exciting. We are doing drawings, black and white drawings by that these artists are doing, which we are going to put online in museum sites for children across the world to be able to color. And along with the drawings, we are giving stories about the artist, stories about the tradition. So for instance, if it is a Gond artist, we are telling them about Gond culture. And we are working on very interesting themes like, the fabled beasts of India, the trees of life. And in this time of the virus, it is showing a very beautiful interconnectedness between all life forms, between taking care of the environment. So all of that is coming in. And it's exciting because if not for the crisis, maybe very few people would have seen it. But now in this digital age, when we are putting up these artworks on websites, the whole world is the audience, so the whole world can know about our remarkable tradition.
Yes, of course. And if you can tell us a little about where all in India have you worked and how that work has been taken outside. And as you mentioned in one of your conversations, that it has sort of given a different perspective to the Indian art and how the artisans and the Indian culture overall is looked at. So how has that projection of art been?
Well, it's been interesting because very consciously the effort in my work is to show another India. And this is in fact the title of the show that I've done at the Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology at Cambridge. It was 1 year long, the exhibition, and it was called Another India. And it was to celebrate Indo-UK relations. And the idea was to show India beyond Bollywood, beyond saris, beyond chicken tikka masala, just to share aspects of India that people did not see. So for instance, I have worked with artisans and artists from all over India, the Northeast, from the Himalayas, from and the different tribes like the Gonds, the Warlis, from the art of Madhubani, lot of this art. Now, every trip we have ended up doing a major show, and every museum has a different sort of approach and a perspective, and so it's been learning for all of us involved. For instance, at the National Museum's Liverpool, the storytelling traditions of India was emphasized. So we looked at Patachitras, we looked at Jogi art, and so the exhibition was called Telling Tales. We looked at that. In the case of Glasgow Museum, we looked at the diaspora, the Indian diaspora in Scotland, and we started collecting in India from those regions. So, for example, in around Glasgow, there were a lot of people from Punjab, there were a lot of people from Bengal, and some people from Assam. So we said, wow, this is an interesting opportunity to collect from these regions. So we collected truck art from Punjab, from Sirhind, which is very interesting. Trucks come from as far as Kashmir to be painted here in Sirhind. We took Dokra art from Bengal, which is done by the tribal community there. And we looked at contemporary sculpture. So, the fusion of things that happens is very interesting, and it allows the viewer to see an India beyond mainstream. So they can come and they can see and say, oh my God, even this exists in India. Let me find out a little more. So it excites people. And in the case of the truck art in Glasgow, I interacted a lot with elderly South Asian people there from Pakistan, from India, and they got so excited when they remembered, the sayings that come on the trucks, the pieces of wisdom that are painted at the back, so they were recalling those things that, in our days, this used to be painted. It was such an interactive thing, and people who normally wouldn't go to museum came to see these shows. That was the interesting aspect.
And you also mentioned that it was done more with the intention of building that awareness around the art forms, as opposed to, just having a commercial interest attached to it. And I think that was very valuable. And Minhas, if you have, please go ahead. Yeah.
So absolutely. I mean, the whole idea is to expand people's consciousness about India, and in the case of the artists, to show them that your audience is not limited to your immediate space. If you are a very good artist and you are producing something really nice, it can go to any place in the world, physically. And now with the digital age, it can go all over the world through digital means. So it's about expansion, actually, expansion of consciousness at different levels, expansion of confidence.
And Minhas, you've been working in this sector, like for over 2 decades, you mentioned. So what has, in your experience, been the impact of this on the rural artisans and the folk artists who may not be actually physically present there to present their work, but they have also benefited from it in some of the ways? What would that both be?
In many ways, when I first started working in this sector, folk and tribal art was something that we took for granted. And we saw the people who made folk and tribal arts and crafts as the nameless, faceless carriers of tradition. So when I started working, I wanted to give them validity, because I honestly believe that, there may be a knowledge system that you're not familiar with, but that is as valid as what you are familiar with. So I started working with the artists to bring them to the level that they can be in white cube galleries, that they can be in the best, museums of the world. And the impact has been phenomenal. On a personal level, it has empowered the artists financially. It has empowered the artists with confidence, because they feel, wow, I may be from a village in Bihar or from a village in Nagaland, but my work is in XYZ museum, It empowers them that way. It has a ripple effect in the village when people see that someone has got somewhere financially and socially and in terms of fame. It empowers others, it inspires them. And from the point of view of what has it done for the image of India, people realize that there is so much more. So maybe they'd like to come for a holiday, somebody would like to make a film, somebody wants to do a doctoral thesis. Lots and lots of paths have opened up with all the work that I've been doing, and it has been very rewarding for everybody concerned.
True. And Minhas, if we have to say that not only your work has been inspiring, but your life, the way you have conducted it, and you have overcome such severe challenges, and how ferocious they were at one point in time in life for you. How has that experience been, and what has it taught you, and a larger message that you'd like to share with people?
In 2015, a sudden diagnosis of cancer actually threw me off track for a couple of months. But then I realized that even that was an opportunity. And I think what it has taught me is that the human spirit is extremely resilient. And that's why in this COVID times, there are so many stories of despair, and people are so, rightly worried. But then what I feel is that worry is fine, but don't go into despair. Even in this moment, take the time of retreat as to build on yourself, to work on yourself, and to see how you can better things, and what my own journey, like the whole cancer treatment, has taught me is that life is as you live it. You want to be a victim, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you want to become an enabler, and an enabler not of yourself alone, but an enabler for everybody, then you can really, really have a supercharged life, and no setback can throw you, because you see yourself as the enabler and not as somebody who is a receiver, So I think shifting out of victim mode really helps. That has been one major learning for me.
No, because I totally, it's easy for one person to say this, but coming from you who has actually lived through that difficult experience and has not only just, overcome that, but enabled so many others around. That, as you mentioned, that you had been, just in your personal level, counseling people, help them to see the good side of life, has been like, a way of really reaching out to those who may not have realized that they needed you. And that's really true, yeah.
That actually, it was summed up by an American friend of mine who's a healer. So, when I got diagnosed and I called her, she said two things that transformed my life, and I'd like to share that here. I called up the day of the diagnosis and I said, I am scared. She said, do you realize that scared and sacred are the same words? And she said, make the cancer your greatest teacher. And I think for us in this time of the COVID also, we should make COVID the greatest teacher. What has it come to teach us? And I think if we do that, then there is suffering. Yes, I don't deny that there is suffering, but then that suffering becomes part of learning, And even in my work with the folk and tribal artists, a lot of them have had very difficult histories because, we've always treated them as lesser, like folk and tribal as lesser. And one of the exercises that we do is that what was your shortcoming, make it your greatest strength, So that is one of the processes that I follow when I work with folk and tribal artists also, that don't sit back and cry. How do you become powerful? How can you express yourself through your art? So I work with an artist called Pushpa Kumari, who comes from Madhubani, and you should look at her paintings on feminist issues. They are so powerful, Or like working with the Jogi family who live on the edge of poverty, how they have made their art their voice. So those are the kind of enabling environments that we can create, And of course, having worked with bamboo for so many years, how can we be more sensitive to the environment? I think a lot of it also comes to the point that we must take full responsibility for the lives we lead, and not feel that we don't have a chance or we can't do anything. Every small step will make a big difference.
I agree, and Minhas, coming at this point, that when it's very easy to lose hope and to blame it on the circumstance and to blame it on the external factors, we probably might miss out on an opportunity where we can change things for ourselves. And I think all of us have that. As you mentioned, the human spirit is so resilient. We just have to tap on that spirit, I guess.
Absolutely. And like I always say, the Chinese Taoist saying that a journey of 1,000 kilometers starts with that one small step. And I think in every way, whether it is in how we treat somebody, whether it is in whether we throw our garbage or we compost it, whether it is switching off the electricity when we are not using, I think every small little change that we bring will just have a huge effect.
No, I agree. And these are the small steps all of us can observe. It doesn't have to be, coming from somewhere, just saving on the basic resources, practicing habits that are more eco-friendly, just making those connections, being gentle around people. I think these are just behavior and habits that need not be even taught to us. Yeah.
Absolutely. And COVID that way can be the best teacher, this time, this retreat that we are having, and we see how the world is flourishing outside. Maybe it's time for us to reflect on how can we be kinder to ourselves, not put pressure. I have to achieve this much, I have to earn that much, look at the number of young people dying today. So, how can we be more gentle to ourselves? How can we be more gentle to earth, and how can we be gentle to each other in our relationships, And I think that's the kind of healing that is needed in the world today, And just this afternoon, I was having a conversation with Venkat Sham, who is one of the greatest Gond artists. And he said something that has been playing in my head. He said that birds and beasts and Adivasis, or the original inhabitants of the place, the Adivasis, that they have an innate understanding of how to be gentle with earth. The birds and bees take only as much as they need. They don't take more than they need. And even Adivasi or the folk and tribal cultures, they have a very gentle way of living. They don't extract too much. And that has been, so it's not about a one-way exchange where I am helping them. No, they are actually expanding my consciousness, They are expanding my thought process, and they teach me so much.
No, I agree. And I think all of these ideas that you are sharing right now, they have been a collective treasure over a period of time that you have amassed. And thanks so much for all of because every side of you, and I know the many sides of you, and they're equally inspiring. And may you continue to do the great work, and may you continue to inspire with just the way you think, with just the way you live. I think that's beautiful, and may you just smile like this always.
Thank you. Anytime. Thank you. And, it's really not... I just feel fortunate. I feel fortunate I have this life, because even when I was going through the treatment, I was working on the first and biggest of its kind show of Indian folk and tribal art in Brisbane for the Asia Pacific Triennale. I had just got the contract when I got diagnosed, and I called them up and I said, I've got diagnosed. I'm perfectly fine if you don't choose me as the curator and you go somewhere else. They said, no, we'll work with you. We only want to work with you, and we'll work with you through this. So I was very thankful for that. But, every chemo, I would pull myself up that I have more artists to review. So actually, I'm grateful that this folk and tribal art that I support actually supported me and pulled me back into life, So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, that was probably a push for you to stop thinking about your own illness and just focus on something which was far more productive.
Absolutely.
Thanks a lot for being on Her Stories, Minaz. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.